Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. It was evening outside, stuffy. A storm was brewing. Not a breeze, not a draft. William was on his way home after a difficult and arduous business negotiation. As he passed the park, the man wanted to take a walk along the path to the large pond. He often went there to get away from work and relax. William braked sharply, parked, and got out of the car. He slowly walked to the clean and beautiful pond, sat down on a bench, watching the ducks dive and quack merrily. Not far away, a grandmother and her grandson, a boy about 7 years old, were walking. He was so funny and red-headed, like the sun. The old woman was limping very badly on one leg, and her grandson was supporting her by the hand, helping her not to fall down. From the outside, this care of the baby looked very touching. The woman sat down tiredly on a bench nearby, and the fidgety boy opened his tattered backpack, took out a sheet, and ran over to William. "Hello. Please make me a boat out of paper. I want to put it on the water, and my grandmother does not know how." William laughed. "Let me teach you. It's not hard. Look, we take a leaf on both sides, fold it in half." Suddenly, the man read in passing what was written on an old yellowed sheet of paper. "My darling, breakfast is on the table. When you leave, shut the door. Your William." William even caught his breath and broke into a cold sweat. It couldn't be. It was his own note, left to a man years ago. He couldn't have confused his handwriting with anyone else's. It's unbelievable. William grew up in an orphanage and went through harsh trials before becoming successful and rich, achieving everything on his own from scratch. The young and negligent mother abandoned her son in the maternity ward, just ran away, and that was it. So the child never knew a mother's affection or warmth at home. All his childhood, he was surrounded by official walls and adults indifferent to the fate of orphans. There were humiliations and punishments, malnutrition, and deafening homesickness. William realized early on that he had no one to rely on but himself, and he learned to fight, not to let himself be hurt. In addition, the boy discovered the ability and desire for technology, including electronics. He himself, without anyone else's help, learned to understand and fix the failures in the phones and computer. Soon, even the teachers began to ask him for help and advice. He began to be respected for his wit and ingenuity. In addition, William had a business acumen. He knew and understood where and what you can buy cheaply and sell more profitable and expensive, making himself a good bargain. After graduation, one of the teachers, taking pity on the talented and stubborn boy, helped him with his admission to university. Thanks to him, William did not go down the wrong path, like many others, but became a certified economist and started his own business. At first, he organized a small firm for the repair and sale of office equipment and phones. Little by little, orders went. The income increased, and the business gained momentum. William lived in a tiny and dead-end room, which was given to him by the state, ate only pasta and the cheapest sausage, and invested all the profits in his brainchild. It was very hard. The guy worked like a squirrel in a wheel 24 hours a day, malnourished and lacked sleep. But over time, he bought a comfortable house, furnished it with love, and began to enjoy the comfort. Like a career was more than excellent, but in his personal life, William was categorically unlucky. He fell in love at first sight in a gorgeous blonde Jenna when he met her at a friend's birthday party. The girl literally won the young man by her beauty, seemed so sweet and charming. The romance spun. It was stormy and passionate. The couple soon got married. But after the wedding, it was as if Jenna was replaced. Where did the modest and quiet spouse began to spend money left and right, and only thought about the new clothes and social events. As it turned out, the household and family life Jenna was absolutely not adapted, and learn it did not even going to, however, and look for work. She did not want to hear about children either. She said it was too early. What was the rush? So it turned out that bedtime pleasures had become boring and did not please either of them. And there was nothing else that the couple had in common. The man just pissed off when he came home to see the chatting over and over with some girlfriend, his wife, and a dull pizza from an expensive restaurant for dinner. As the years passed, nothing changed. In response to her husband's occasional requests to cook or bake, Jenna only snorted. "Why do I have to slave at the stove? Hire a cook. What's the problem?" 5 years later, William filed for divorce. He was tired of the exorbitant appetites of his wife. She was not enough. After the divorce, the businessman, of course, had more affairs, but all ended in rupture. William, though he could earn good money, lived in luxury, but he did not consider money the meaning of his life. He helped orphans because he himself had suffered a lot as a child and knew how difficult it was to survive in orphanages. His only and loyal friend was Simon, a huge dog. The man had traded him for pennies from a vagrant. The puppy was in terrible condition, all skinny, flea-ridden, and with a torn ear. William took a long time to cope with the dog, treated it, vaccinated it, bought special food, and still he came out, cured it, and sincerely loved it. So they lived alone with the dog, and so wanted a family, children, and home warmth. His thoughts and memories were interrupted by the same boy, who never left, and waited patiently for the stranger to make the boat. "Dude, what's the matter with you? Have you forgotten how to make a boat?" William shook his head, driving away the shadows of the past, and suddenly asked, "What's your name, kid? Where did you get that leaf? What is it? It's very important for me to know." The boy looked at him in surprise. "My name is Thomas. I took a piece of paper from home from a pile of old notebooks." "Why? It was just lying around anyway." William put aside this yellowed sheet of paper, went to his briefcase, and took out a blank sheet of scrap paper from his folder. The man finished the ship, gave it to the joyful boy, and went to his grandmother with the very note. He did not know how to ask and where to begin the conversation. "Good afternoon. My name is William. Excuse me, but your grandson just asked me to make a boat out of this sheet, and I happened to read the note. Here it is. Take a look. You see, it probably looks silly and ridiculous from the outside, but it's my note. I wrote it years ago to a girl, Maria. Do you know her? How else would you have had this note in your house?" The elderly woman sighed heavily. "It's a pleasure, and I'm Anna." "Oh, you're right, young man. Maria is my late daughter. She died 7 years ago in childbirth. Poor thing. Now I'm raising my grandson alone. It's so hard. I have no strength or health." And the note. "I don't even know. My daughter had a love affair in the next town. It's true. Maybe she loved you a lot because she kept it so carefully." William asked dumbfoundedly, "How did she die? When is Thomas's birthday?" Anna replied, "Yes, that's right. Thomas was born in the summer, on June 9, but I don't know by whom, and my daughter was like a partisan. She kept quiet until the last moment. She lived in another city for a while. She worked in a cafe. She called me often, chirped that she met her love, the real love. Like everything was so good, they were already living together, and the wedding was soon. And then suddenly she drove home with her things, in tears and still pregnant. She was crying into her pillow, but she didn't say a word. She must have been very upset. She had a fight with her boyfriend, and she couldn't get him out of her mind. I was not a beast. I felt pity for my little one. I grumbled and forgave her, and accepted her daughter. I didn't bother her with questions. I thought she would give birth and tell everything herself. But you see how it all turned out. Oh, what a shame. Pregnancy was difficult. Labor was hard. We barely managed to save Thomas, and the daughter could not. When they told me my daughter was gone, I couldn't believe it. How could it be? I took a healthy woman to the maternity hospital, and she was murdered. She was still young. She would have lived and lived. At first I thought I would go crazy with grief. I was angry. I did not want to take the baby. It seemed to me that all the trouble was because of him. But then my heart wavered. I went to see him, and when I took my grandchild in my arms, I felt light and warm. Such a miracle redhead, batting his eyes, and I was so choked up, I thought, but he is an innocent soul, not guilty of anything. Moreover, he himself was left an orphan. And his father's dead and his mother's dead. What awaits him? An orphanage. And me? How can I live, eat, and sleep peacefully, knowing that my grandson is in orphanages? So I took my grandson, and we lived together. It's hard for me, of course, to pull him on one pension. I save on everything, and I cannot work. A damn limp interferes. Oh, I'm talking about something. Apparently, accumulated for many years. William was totally shocked. Everything matched. Could it be that Thomas was his son? He seemed to be a redhead, but he was blonde, even though Maria also had beautiful honey-colored hair and pimples on her nose, so maybe he took after his mother. That's the way it is. How could he check it out? And then it dawned on the man. He discreetly took off the shoulder of the boy's fallen hair and put it in his pocket, and he continued the conversation. How long have you been limping, Anna? What kind of illness do you have? It's not just impudence or curiosity. I want to help you. The woman replied, Oh, it's been a long time, honey. It's been 9 years since I fell on my knee in the ice, and I've been having problems with my leg ever since. It's getting worse every year. I hurt my joints. Doctors prescribe useless ointments and injections, and hint at an expensive operation to change the entire joint. How much money that is? Where can I get it? It began to get dark, and the woman realized, Oh, it's time for us to go home. By the time I get there, it'll be nightfall, and my grandson hasn't had his supper yet. William suggested, Let me give you a ride home. It's no problem. My car is here, in the parking lot near the park. Granny wailed. Thank you, dear man. I won't refuse. And when I think about how long it's going to take. William gave his grandmother and Thomas a ride home to see where they lived. The house was very shabby, unkept, the fence hanging on by a thread, the windows still with shutters, and it was obvious that they lived very poorly. They said goodbye warmly, like old acquaintances, and the man went back to his home. He was not himself all evening. The red-haired Thomas was on his mind, and he was going through the memory of the affair with Maria. It was almost immediately after his divorce. I felt bad and disgusting, and for the first time in my life, William probably decided to get drunk. No, not drunk, but drunk enough to get all the bad stuff out of my head. He could have done it in an expensive restaurant, of course, but for some reason he wanted to do it in an ordinary roadside cafe. That's where he met Maria. This perky redhead with an enchanting smile gave him one drink after another, and he was still not drunk. He desperately wanted to talk to someone, to share his problems, but there were no true, faithful friends. He was used to keeping everything to himself, so he kept silent. It was closing time. The customers had all left, and the waitress suddenly sat down next to him and shyly asked, We're closing soon, and you're still as sad as ever. Did something happen to you? Is there something I can help you with? William was so moved by this concern and sympathy for a complete stranger that he suddenly responded, You can. Get yourself some wine and repeat it to me, and just listen to me. It's vital to me right now. The girl replied, I can't drink alcohol. I'm at work, and I can't talk to clients either. But as an exception, I'd love to have coffee with you. There's no one else here anyway. I'll be right back. Maria sat down next to him, and he unknowingly twisted his whole soul in front of her, something that had never happened to him before. The girl listened seriously, did not interrupt with advice. Then suddenly she said, I know how to help you. You need a friend who will always be there for you, who will not betray you, and who will keep you warm. Come with me. And she confidently led the dazed man somewhere into the back room. William understood nothing, and Maria led him out the back door into the yard, bent down, and rustled her hand under the porch. Then, panting, she pulled out a large cardboard box. In it, on a soft bedding, funny multicolored kittens were rummaging. She picked up the sturdiest big-eyed ashy bun and put it on the man's lap. "Here, it's a kitty cat. Don't be afraid, pet him. He will relieve your moping in no time." These sufferers were left all alone, so I nursed them. At first I even rushed by the hour from a dropper to feed them. At me all laughed. They did not believe that the kittens will survive. But I got them all up on their feet, and this is my favorite. Really, he is wonderful, such an affectionate kitty. Would you like to keep him? I would take myself, but I have a cat at home. The owner will not allow another kitten. The little kitten trustfully snuggled up to the man, and as soon as he felt his warm hands, he immediately began to caress and rub his face, making loud noises. William had to smile. How cute and funny the kitten was. He looked fondly at the waitress and answered, "It really is easier. I'm just like this abandoned kitten. I grew up in a shelter, so I understand what it's like for him without a mother. I already have a dog. I nursed him for a long time too. And now I'm going to have a cat too. I will take it. It will be more fun in the house if you promise to come and visit the pet." That's how they met, began dating, and feelings flared up between them. Maria was sweet, direct, and open. She fell in love with William very much. You could see it in her eyes. She looked at him so devotedly. At first, William was all fired up too, and the couple even began to live together. It was Maria who taught him to leave each other nice notes, to do nice things in little things. Maria was very simple. She did not go with him to social events. Or rather, she only went once, and it was embarrassing for both of them. But after a few months, William's passion cooled down. A life together got boring, and he began to pick on her, that she cooked wrong dinner. She can't dress stylishly. She does not know how to show herself in high society. Maria cried, got angry, and screamed. "Well, you knew I was just a waitress, so why are we living together? Let's break up since I'm not your type, and I'm not worthy to be with you." Then they made up, and everything seemed to go on as usual, but the rift in their relationship grew larger and larger. And then, one night, they had another fight over nothing. And Maria couldn't stand it, slammed the door and left. And William didn't stop her. That's how stupidly they broke up. The man plunged back into work. How much water had flowed since then. And only a fat cat reminiscent of that fleeting romance. And only now, 7 years later, seeing Thomas, William suddenly realized that perhaps Maria was the only one who loved him for nothing, not for money. And his heart ached so much that he did not appreciate her sincere feelings, could not build a family, could not hold on to such a good, simple girl. William gave the hair to Thomas for examination. He wasn't the least bit worried. For some reason, he was sure the baby was his son. William was so fond of the little boy. He felt so genuinely sorry for him. And his old lame grandmother, too. So the very next evening after work, he decided to visit them, just to check on them. On the way, he bought Thomas a big racing car with a remote control and lots of sweets, a bag of food, and a huge cake. Timidly, he knocked on the flimsy gate. Almost immediately, he heard the boy's ringing voice. "Who's there?" "Oh, hello, Uncle William. Are you visiting us? Come on in." "Wow, is that for me? That's great. Thank you. I've never had a car like this. Kevin's gonna get one. He's always teasing me about being naked." The baby was chirping nonstop. Grandma came out to hear the noise. She just spluttered when she saw what delicacies the guest was putting on the table. "Good afternoon, William. Are you visiting us?" Oh. Why so many things? It's embarrassing, isn't it? Come in, please, and I've just got some hot pancakes with apples. Don't hesitate to have some. I'll put the kettle on in a jiffy. What brings you here?" William looked around. Yes, everything here needed an overhaul, and an urgent one at that. But it was neat and tidy, though one could tell it had been done by a child's hand. William began a conversation. "You know, Anna, I didn't tell you everything yesterday. It was me your daughter was having an affair with at the time. And it was to her that I wrote that very note on a piece of paper. But then we broke up in a silly way. And that was my fault. I was thinking all night last night, what if Thomas is my son? I mean, it could be, right? Somehow, I just feel like he's no stranger to me, you know. I don't know how to explain it. So I thought I'd just come to see you. I live alone, or rather with a dog and a cat, but I want to have a family and children. I couldn't make a family when I was young, and now I can't make one either. Anna sighed heavily. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe it's yours, maybe it's not. I told you, my daughter never really told me anything. She didn't have time. Yeah, I know it's bad enough being alone. Come and visit us more often. Sweetheart, we're glad to see you. Thomas is glowing. If you don't want presents, come and visit us. He misses parental love, I can tell. I can't keep up with him. He's so fast. William stayed at Anna's until late at night. He and Thomas collected jigsaw puzzles and played airplanes. Then they all had dinner and tea with cake. William caught himself thinking that he felt so good with the baby. His soul was filled with warmth, tenderness, and some unknown before feelings of love for the little defenseless man. But when the results of the examination came back and William's eyes widened, it said in black and white that Thomas was not his son. They weren't related at all. What a twist. The man sat down on the pouf and just sat there for a good hour. After all, he was sure Thomas was his own son. He felt some kind of inner connection with him, invisible. On reflection, William did not say anything to Anna yet, but continued to go to visit them. He was always welcome there. The baby frankly missed him, becoming more and more attached, running to meet him, spreading his arms. One day, in the middle of the night, an alarm bell rang. An agitated Anna almost screamed. William, I'm sorry to call you in the middle of the night, but here's the thing. Thomas got sick. He's vomiting, he has a high fever, and he's clutching his stomach. I called an ambulance, but they're taking too long. I don't know what to do. The man jumped up and down on the bed, his sleep vanishing like a lightning bolt. I'll be there in a minute. Get him dressed. We're going to the hospital. I'm going to call everyone. They're crazy. They're not coming. I'll be right there. William raced like a madman, breaking all the rules of the road, ran into the house, grabbed the boy in his arms, and carried him to the car, whispering to him, "Hold on. We're going to the hospital now. You're going to be all right. Where does it hurt? Let me see." The frightened and crying child was writhing in pain. "My stomach hurts. Am I going to die like my mother?" Yes. Everything inside William was overturned by these words. "I'm gonna die on you now. Be patient. You're a man. Don't scare Grandma, or we'll have to treat her too. I said it'll be okay. Do you believe me?" Thomas nodded, gasping for air. "I believe you. You just stay by my side. Don't leave me, okay?" The boy had appendicitis and was rushed to surgery. Anna and William were left waiting in the corridor. An hour later, the doctor came out and reported, "Don't worry, Daddy, it's all right. In 3 weeks, he'll be jumping and bouncing. Now go home and come see her tomorrow. One of you can stay, and that's as an exception." William looked pleadingly at Anna. "I'll call you a cab, you go home, and I'll sit with Thomas. I told you everything would be all right." The woman wiped her eyes with her handkerchief and thanked the man. "Thank you for everything. I was just so scared for my grandson. Who to call, where to run, and that leg. And the ambulance, as if by chance, is not coming. As I thought that with my grandson something bad, I felt sick. After all, he is the only one I have. There is no one else on this earth." William was napping on a chair in the room, waiting for the boy to wake up from the anesthesia. Finally, he opened his eyes, and when he saw William, he smiled pretentiously and said quietly, "Are you here with me?" "Thank you, Uncle William. You know, you're like my daddy." Thank you." William couldn't help himself. The tears rolled from his eyes, and he swallowed them, crouched close to the child, and rubbed his red curls. "I promised, and men always keep their promises. You've become like a son to me too. I was so worried about you, more than me. You gave me and Grandma a real scare. Admit it, you ate sunflower seeds with peels. Why did you have appendicitis?" William visited Thomas every day, brought him fruit and toys, and knew for sure that he would never be able to part with him. Life without this quick-tempered prankster and fidget had no meaning at all. And then William decided to have a frank conversation with Anna. The man was very worried. He did not know how she would react. Would she agree to his proposal? William brought his grandmother home from the hospital. They sat down in the kitchen for tea. And William began. "Anna, I have a very important conversation to have with you. We've only known each other for a short time. I agree. But as it happens, I've grown quite fond of Thomas, and I've grown quite fond of him. And he's become fond of me too, as you can see. I'd like to adopt him. I mean, you're old enough now, you never know. I want to live with Thomas, raise him, teach him, love him. I could give him a good education, bring him out into the world. How do you feel about that? Don't think I'm going to keep you two apart. I've got a big, solid house, plenty of room for everybody." The woman thought hard, weighed everything, was silent for a long time, and then answered, "We really don't know each other very well, and I'm very scared to make such an important decision, but for some reason I believe you. You don't have any self-interest, do you? And you don't look like a scoundrel at all. You saved your grandson. You took him to the hospital in the middle of the night. I agree, but know that I'm not one step away from my grandson. You must keep an eye on him. He's so quick, if you're not lying. And we'll all live together. Have it your way. Otherwise, God forbid I don't have time to raise my grandson, or he'll end up in an orphanage. That's exactly the fate I don't want for him. But just ask him yourself in front of me. The main thing is that he wants it too. I will not force the child. You know that." William walked with Thomas around the room the next day. He was holding his side and groaning, afraid to straighten up. Then William got crafty. "Do you want me to tell you something that will make you forget about your side and jump as a grasshopper?" The boy watched with interest and even stopped oohing and awing. "How about that? Tell me?" William exhaled. "I want to adopt you. I want to take you and your grandmother to live with me. I have a big house, a huge good dog, and a cat. I promise I will love you and never hurt you. How do you like the news? Are you happy?" Thomas glowed and almost jumped on the spot. "Hooray! You're going to be my daddy now. For real? That's great. When I first saw you in the park, for some reason I thought you were good, and you were the best." William hugged the baby and whispered, "And now, as promised, 2 laps around the ward, and no slacking off. The doctor said you need to pace yourself. Now march." The baby grunted and sniffled, but he paced. He was so happy and excited that he was willing to endure the pain, just so his father would be near him and be proud of him. William filed all the necessary papers for adoption, and Thomas and his grandmother went to live with him. Strangely enough, there was not the slightest discomfort. Anna took control of the kitchen and was happy to walk in the alley in the yard, though it was very difficult for her. Thomas quickly became friends with Simon, and with great zeal began to teach him commands, and in the evenings he played with the cat and stroked his belly. Anna showed William Maria's grave. He looked for a long time at the picture of this young and sweet red-haired woman, and thought how unfair it was that she passed away so early and nothing can be returned. He whispered softly, "Hello, Maria. Forgive me, fool, for not returning you back then, for not trying to save our relationship. I thought, in fact, that you were not my type. What a businessman and a waitress. And only now I realize that you were the only one who loved me so sincerely and selflessly. without asking anything in return. Don't worry about your son. He's in good hands. I promise you that I will raise him to be a real man. I will do everything to make him happy. The sun suddenly peeked out from behind the clouds and warmed him with its warm rays. It was Maria who responded to him. William was sure. He put the grave in order, ordered an expensive monument, and began to visit it often with Thomas. On one such visit, William saw a young woman in a black lace handkerchief. She was holding 2 roses and was crying quietly near Maria's grave. A surprised William called out to the stranger, "Good afternoon. Excuse me, did you know Maria? Are you a friend of hers?" The woman answered quietly, "Yes, she did. No, I'm not her friend, but we had a complicated relationship, and the news of her death came as a shock to me. It's a long, long story." William and the woman stepped aside to the bench. "I'm in no hurry. Tell me everything you know. Everything about Maria is very important to me now." The stranger sighed and began a confused story. "My name is Betty. You see, I got married early when I was 18. I had a good, kind husband, and I couldn't complain. But God wouldn't let me have children. I was barren. Doctors gave up on me a long time ago. I went to the best professor, and he said that it was hopeless. I would never get pregnant. But my spouse wanted children very much, and so did I. So 7 years ago, we put an advertisement in the newspaper that we were looking for a surrogate mother. Maria was the one who responded. My husband and I liked her. Simple, sweet girl. But it was embarrassing because she had had no children herself. Usually such women are not accepted as surrogate mothers. But Maria was begging and assured me that she was in good health. She needed a lot of money urgently. Her mother needed an operation. She had something wrong with her legs. Maria decided to become a surrogate mother. So we agreed. Of course, everything was on trust. We did not conclude the contract. We didn't want to make it too public. Maria successfully got pregnant. We rented her an apartment, bought her groceries, watched her well-being, and couldn't believe with my husband that we would become parents very soon. But every day Maria grew darker and darker, cried a lot, and was not telling us much. We began to suspect something was wrong. And after a couple of months, the expectant mother just ran away, leaving a note that she couldn't give up her baby. And she didn't care who the father was. Just like that. And she didn't take any money. We were in shock. We didn't know where to find her. I cried for a long time. I couldn't come to my senses. I was angry at her. But how could she do such an irresponsible thing? 100 times we asked her if she was ready to give up the baby. Does she understand that he is a stranger to her? She agreed to everything. And then she did such a thing. But bad things never come alone. A few years later, my husband was killed when he fell through the ice during a winter fishing trip. I thought I was going crazy with grief, howling day and night. And so I was left all alone in the world, childless and needless. Maria I forgave a long time ago, because it is probably really impossible to give up a baby, which you yourself bore. It is morally very difficult. And I kept thinking, where is my baby? How is he? I was all alone in the world. So I decided to look for Maria, to talk to her, maybe to see my child. I made a lot of effort to find out her address. I got there, and then they say that she died in childbirth. Now I'm standing there crying, thinking, where can I find my son? William almost cried as he listened to this sad woman's story and cried out, pointing to the boy. There he is, Thomas, your son. He does look just like you. I wondered what he looked like. Maria had copper hair too, but not as bright as yours. Only I adopted him recently. He calls me Daddy. We love each other. I won't just give him to you. The woman covered her face with her hands and wept bitterly. How can that be? I am his own mother. He is my own flesh and blood. How unfair everything in life is. The boy thinks a woman who is essentially a stranger to him is his mother, and you are his father. And me? What about me? Will I live alone and not see, not communicate with my own son? then there's no reason to live. William felt so sorry for this poor stranger, with her fate twisted and broken. Indeed, how cruel it is to know that you have a son and not be able to see him, to love him, to bring him up. It shouldn't be like that. And the man exclaimed emotionally, "Betty, look, don't despair. I mean, really, aren't we human? Can't we agree on how to raise a child? Or are we going to tear him apart? I have a proposition for you. Move in with me. For good. I have a big house. I'll give you the bedroom on the second floor, with a balcony. I live there with Thomas and his grandmother. We'll raise our son together. I know it sounds crazy to move in with a man you've known for half an hour, but I assure you, I have nothing wrong in my mind. I'm a respected businessman, William. A lot of people know and respect me. It's just that I can see how you are suffering, so I want to help you. After all, if you don't like something, you can always split up, can't you? I only have one condition. Don't shock the baby and tell him that you are his mother. It will break his psyche. Little by little, Thomas will get used to you, will reach out, and I'm sure he'll call you Mom." Betty nodded her head. "Yes, of course you're right. It would be a total shock to the boy, because he thinks his mother is dead and resting here. And he won't accept me with open arms just like that. That's understandable too. Thanks for the offer. Can I think about it? Let's exchange addresses and phone numbers. I still need some time to sort out work and relocation issues." William had not been himself all week since his conversation with Betty at the cemetery. This sad, lonely stranger, who turns out to be Thomas's own mother, was deeply in his heart. He thought of her day and night, wondering if she would decide to move in with him or not. In his heart, he wished she would. For some reason, the man was drawn to her. He wanted to see those big, sad eyes again, and to catch the faint floral scent of her perfume. Betty rushed around the apartment, packing her things in her suitcase, and kept thinking, "My God, what am I doing? Where am I going? To whom? To a strange, unfamiliar man in another city. I'm leaving my usual job, and who knows what it will be like there. I'm crossing out my whole life, in one fell swoop, like a jump into the abyss. And on the other hand, what kind of life? A life full of loneliness and sadness, tears and pain. What am I missing? The tired route, work, empty housework. There's my son, Thomas, a lovely little snub-nosed red-headed boy. So what if they're strangers and he doesn't know her? So what if he doesn't know her? At least she will be there, like a guardian angel, to protect him and love him. And time will fix everything. No, that's it. To hell with it all. My son is more important." All the way there, Betty was pounding with chills. She bought her son an expensive robot and a fancy backpack, and timidly knocked on the gate. The huge dog barked in the yard. Suddenly, she heard the voice of the owner. "Simon, you can't. Who's there?" William stepped out onto the porch, and his heart began to beat faster, for there stood Betty. How beautiful she was in her sweet beret and cashmere coat, with a reddish lock of hair fluttering out from under it and curling behind her ear. Her huge eyes looked so frightened. She said, "Well, here I am. Welcome the new tenant. I hope you haven't changed your mind. And that's okay. I should have called, shouldn't I?" William smiled broadly and replied, "Betty, honey, come on in. And let's keep it on a first-name basis, since we're going to live together. I'm very glad you accepted my offer. I've told Anna, but I haven't given her all the details yet. I think it won't be easy for her to know that her daughter died giving birth to a stranger's child. Said you were a good old friend of mine. Well, what are we standing here for? Please." The man took the heavy suitcase by the handle and rolled it into the house, showing him the rooms on the way, and telling him where and what was there. Curious Thomas immediately ran up to his guest. "Hello, I remember you. We met at my mom's cemetery. Are you coming to visit us? Why do you have a suitcase? Will you be staying with us?" The little boy asked his guest a lot of questions, not even knowing what was going on in the woman's soul when he uttered the phrase, "at his mother's cemetery." Betty was embarrassed. She was distraught at the baby's words, and she didn't know what to answer. But William saved the situation and said, "It's Betty, a friend of your mother's, and a good friend of mine. She's going to live with us and work as your nanny. I'm at work all day, and Grandma's old. She can't keep up with you. Betty will take care of you and play with you, so you won't get bored. I'm sure you two will become friends." The baby exclaimed joyfully, "That's great. It'll help me with my lessons, because I don't know a thing about math." Betty breathed a sigh of relief. Now her presence here was understandable and unintimidating, and Thomas would get used to her more quickly. That was William's idea after all. And Anna didn't need an explanation, especially since William was just getting ready to take Grandma to a professor he knew to consult on a knee operation. The man really wanted to help Thomas's grandmother so that she would stop limping so badly and suffering from joint pain. And if there was to be an operation, Thomas would definitely need a babysitter while Grandma was in the hospital. And so they all began to live together, slowly getting used to each other and becoming really close. Betty and Thomas hit it off right away, the boy reaching out to her, as if feeling the invisible thread between them that bound them together by the bonds of blood. They enjoyed studying together, taking walks, watching cartoons, and playing with the cat. Betty and William had a long, friendly relationship. They liked to have a glass of wine with appetizers on weekends and have a long, intimate conversation until late at night about life. The man did not hold back, telling her about his difficult childhood, about his unsuccessful past affairs, and Betty did not hide anything, complained that she could never give birth to a child herself, as childless, that she still remembers her husband and misses him. Both felt a mutual sympathy and attraction for each other, but did not dare to cross the line. Their shared concern for their son united them so much that they felt like one family. Anna had been watching the couple from the sidelines for a long time and had long realized that William and Betty loved each other, only they could not admit it to themselves. So she decided to help them. She seized a moment when Betty took Thomas to the karate class and decided to talk. "Listen, William, I've lived my life. I've seen a lot of things, and I keep looking at you and Nanny, and I can't understand it. Why do you torture each other? You live together as it is. You can see that you love each other, so get married, and that's it. My grandson Betty adores her. He can't get enough of her. And life is only one. The years go by quickly." William was taken aback. "How did you know that? I do love Betty, but there's a secret, and I don't know how to tell you about it. I'm afraid of hurting you too. That's why I don't dare propose to her. And she's afraid that if the truth comes out, you'll hate her and Thomas won't understand." The elderly woman only waved her hand. "Oh, I know what you're keeping secret there. Don't mind me. I often wander around at night. I can't sleep. I'm getting damn old." I realized that Betty was Thomas's mother, and Maria was trying to be a surrogate for her. I couldn't help overhearing your intimate conversations. At first I cried secretly and was a little angry with Betty, because she gave birth to my daughter and she died. But the past cannot be undone. I see how my grandson loves her, and she loves him sincerely. Everyone has his own cross to bear. Don't drag it out, dear. Betty's just waiting for you to marry her, to make her feel good. We're all human beings. We all need warmth and affection. And about Thomas, there's no need to tell him, for heaven's sake. He's too young. Let him think of Maria as my mother, and he'll call Betty his mother soon enough. You'll see." William was even moved by these words. "What a wise woman you are, Hannah. Thank you for understanding. Don't be angry. You're probably right. You should live here and now, not look back on the past. Oh, I forgot. I paid for your joint replacement surgery, so get ready. On Monday you will be in the ward. Don't worry about Thomas. We'll take care of him. I hope you get well. I can't bear to see you suffering with that knee." Anna spluttered with her hands and almost cried. "God, William, honey, Thank you. That's a lot of money. You didn't spare it for another man's old lady. I've never met anyone like you. By God, you're a golden man." William was even embarrassed. "What a stranger you are. You're my son's grandmother, a member of the family. Come on, overpraise me. Let's go drink tea instead." That same night, there was a quiet knock on Betty's room. The woman rubbed her eyes sleepily and staggered to the door in her thin, lacy nightgown. Quietly, she opened the door and froze. William was standing on the threshold with a pillow in his hands. He slipped inside, hugged the woman sharply, and whispered, "Can I join you? Will you let me go? Betty, darling, darling, I can't go on like this. I'm not made of iron. Be mine forever and ever. I've never met anyone like you." Finally, Betty waited. She heard the very words she had longed for and responded passionately to the kiss. William picked up the feather-light woman in his arms and carried her to the bed, covering every millimeter of her body with kisses. They did not sleep a wink until dawn, and only the sleigh moon peeking through the window was witness to their love and passion. It was as if Betty had been replaced from that day on. She was no longer sad, but fluttered about the house, her euphonious laughter spilling out everywhere. Anna, seeing this, crossed herself silently and whispered, "Thank God. At least they'll be happy, since my Maria didn't succeed." Thomas began to call Betty mother more and more often, the words slipping through his fingers at random, and the woman melted with happiness at the sound of her son's words. Anna was safely operated on and almost no longer limping, and was now able to enjoy gardening and her favorite flower beds and taking long walks. And she was eternally grateful to William and to God for helping them meet in the park at that time. A year went by. Betty and William had been married for a long time and lived together as friends. The man was very proud of his family. He rushed home with all his might, knowing that everyone there looked forward to him, loved and respected him. Betty took care of the household, fussed about the house, and enjoyed her role as a mother, giving her son all her time. But lately she had been feeling very unwell. She often vomited, especially in the mornings, lost her appetite, and couldn't eat anything. And then she woke up with a vicious hunger and literally swept everything off the table. She also lost a lot of weight, and for some reason she wanted to sleep. Betty was exhausted, read a lot of diagnoses on the internet, and began to suspect the worst. But to go to the doctor was afraid. What if he would say that she had nothing left to live? So she endured everything, hoping that it would pass by itself. William, too, began to suspect something was wrong. His wife had changed a great deal, had become distracted, often cried in secret, and intimacy had become less frequent. He tormented himself, thinking that perhaps Betty had fallen out of love and was now tormented, not knowing how to tell her about it. Or maybe she was seeing someone else. He just couldn't get over it. And only Anna long ago guessed what it was all about. And one day she couldn't stand it. Girl will be, I'll tell you that. The signs are true. Her nose is covered with freckles, and she's hungry for sweets. Doesn't look like a boy. I too, when Maria was pregnant, ate all the cakes and gingerbread men in my mouth. William and Betty looked at her dumbfounded and asked in one voice, "Ho's having a girl? What do you mean?" The pensioner only laughed. God, they're both in their 30s, and they still don't realize they're about to have a baby. That's hilarious. Thomas, grandson, you'll have a sister. Mark my grandmother's words. Betty just waved her hand. No, it's impossible. Don't make up God knows what. I have been childless for a long time. It's been many years since medical experts diagnosed me. I'm just sick, but I don't know what it is. It's hard and bad for me. William only clapped his eyes and didn't know how to react. Had Grandma gone crazy? Anna only uttered, "You think my grandmother's gone crazy in her old age?" Well, in our village we used to use omens to determine the due date, pregnancy, and sex of the child. It'll be a girl, and that's it. The couple whispered all night, didn't sleep a wink, and early the next morning William, despite his wife's protests, took her to the gynecologist. What could it be? Betty sobbed and couldn't believe her ears as the doctor ran the probe over her abdomen and told her, showing her on the monitor, "You're pregnant, 3 months pregnant. Everything's fine. Why are you crying? There's nothing wrong with the baby. I'll say it again. Be happy." The woman explained confusedly through her sobs. "I'm glad. It's just that I was told years ago that I was hopelessly infertile, so I didn't expect to get pregnant at all. It's like a miracle." The doctor only grinned. "A child is a miracle. We've seen more than that here. So your doctor was wrong. Things happen. Get dressed, Mommy, and don't cry. Take care of yourself." William almost went crazy with the happiness that came over him. Well, he was going to be a father. He and Betty were going to have a baby. He'd never dared to dream of it. Now all that mattered was that Thomas didn't get it right and get upset or get jealous. When William and Betty arrived home from the hospital, they found Anna crying. She wailed, "William, Betty, this has happened. Thomas has escaped. That's the trouble with my tongue. I told him yesterday it was going to be a girl, and my grandson's got it all wrong. I came to wake him up this morning, and he wasn't there. I went to the yard. No, I've been all over the place. I don't know what to do. Where should I look for him? Where could he have gone?" It suddenly dawned on Betty. "I know where he is. At his mother's cemetery. Hurry up and go." Silly boy, I can imagine what he's been up to. The couple went to the cemetery. Indeed, a sad and weeping Thomas sat on her grave. Seeing William and Betty, the boy cried out, "Go away. You don't need me now. I'm a stranger to you. And soon you'll have a baby of your own. What do you need me for? I'll only get in the way." Betty couldn't hold back. She fell to her knees. "Son, my darling, what are you saying? My little one, I love you more than life. I swear, we will all raise our little sister together, but you will not make me and Daddy love you any less." Thomas wiped his nose and looked at William incredulously. "Really, Daddy? You won't fall out of love with me either? Honestly, honestly." The man picked up the baby in his arms and hugged him tightly. "I give the word of a man. You are my son, and I am proud of you. And you will always be, not only that, but you're the eldest son. Don't ever do that again. Don't run away. You gave us a big scare. Grandma's been crying all morning. Come on, let's go home. Don't upset Maria's mother. She is in heaven. But she is worried about you and Betty's mother." On the way, Thomas snuggled up to Betty, calmed down, and fell asleep. He realized that he was important and needed in this family. He was loved and cared for deeply. Betty's pregnancy was hard, with swelling and toxemia, but William was very supportive and took such touching care of her, kneading her legs and lower back, helping her to put on her shoes, stroking her belly so the baby wouldn't push so hard. Thomas was also so funny, putting his ear to his belly and talking to his little sister. "Hey, hello, can you hear me? I'm your brother Thomas." Surprisingly, the baby always tapped his foot in response, as if responding. It was so funny. William had taken parenting classes with Betty, and he agreed to a partner delivery, which he later regretted very much. He fainted 3 times, broke into a cold sweat, and was amazed at the strength and agony women went through to give birth. At last he heard the long-awaited cry, and his heart was relieved. When the daughter was placed on his wife's chest and he was allowed to take her in his arms, it was such an indescribable moment of happiness to hold the lump that was the dearest baby in the world. When Betty was discharged from the hospital, everyone was afraid of how Thomas would react, because it's one thing to just talk about having a baby sister and another to live with her. But to everyone's surprise, the son took the role of big brother very responsibly. He watched the baby, played with her, rocked the cradle. Mila was very calm, hardly ever cried, and was always smiling at her brother, pulling her arms to him. William just melted as he watched this adorable picture. He hugged them both and whispered, how much I love you." And Betty often thought to herself, "Thank you, Maria, not only for your son, but also for such a wonderful husband. For if it hadn't been for you, William and I would never have met."